Hello again, what's up? How is everyone going? Another epic New Zealander on the show today. She's an educator, change maker, innovator, engineer, author, and speaker. And if that's not enough, founder of Nanogirl Labs. Welcome to the stage, Michelle Dickinson.
Kia ora, Jase, how are you? It's good to see you again, sort of in person. I haven't seen you in ages.
Yeah, I know. It's been probably a couple years now. I heard you speak a while back and you're amazing, so it's really cool to have you on the show.
Well, we used to share an office, right? Back in the day when we shared the collab space in Robert's space, and then I saw you at the Ryla thing a couple of years ago. So
we've met on a few occasions actually. So how's the brain at the moment, first of all? I know it's been a chaotic time on your end.
Yeah, we are full on, which is good, right? I mean, it's a challenging time for everybody, and I'd rather be busy than have nothing to do. So I'm not going to complain.
Before we get into the crunchy stuff, just give your quick history and what you're all about and what you keep busy with these days.
Sure. So I'm an engineer by training, have a PhD in nanotechnology, fracture mechanics and materials, which means I break tiny stuff, use that to break things for some cool companies, Apple, Intel, IBM. Obviously, as your smartphone gets smaller, the bits get smaller, and I need to figure out whether or not when you drop your phone, they're going to break. And so that was my job for a long time. Lived in the States for 10 years, grew up as a military kid, so grew up all over the place, and then moved to New Zealand almost a decade ago, worked at the uni for a while, and then just became a little bit frustrated about how little diversity I was seeing in those studying engineering. So not just gender or race, but also socioeconomic background. I came from a background that, my parents didn't have much. They weren't educated, and I feel really lucky to be in this position. And I just wanted to make sure that more kids like me get the opportunities to get education and be creators of new technologies. So that's me in a nutshell.
Neat. And so tell everyone what Nanogirl Labs do, because I know that's what you spend 90% of your time on these days.
Nanogirl Labs is an education company designed to help everybody everywhere fall in love with and build confidence around STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. And when I talk to grown-ups about science, they usually go back to their 13-year-old self and Bunsen burners and Petri dishes, and they either love it or they hate it. But they probably haven't had a relationship with science since then. And the challenge with that is if your science education was a negative experience, it can be really challenging for you to not pass that on to your children. And so as you grow up and you start to pass on this knowledge, we call it, intergenerational fear. So a mum, for example, who wasn't good at maths may tell her daughter, oh, it's fine to not be good at maths because I wasn't good at maths, so you don't have to be either. And almost this permission to fail early on. We're here to sort of make sure everybody realizes that science and maths are everywhere. Technology is the future. We're seeing it right now. And how can you build a relationship with yourself? And how can your children build a relationship that's not just about what you study at school, but how do you use all these things in your everyday life to excel, to know whether or not this is a virus that's good or bad, how viruses move when we're talking about COVID, to think about whether or not you should learn to code, and if so, why, and how might help you in your business. So yeah, we're just trying to help people build relationships that aren't in school with science and technology.
Good on you. I know you've had a bit of a gnarly 2 months. Take us through what that journey has looked like.
Gnarly is a good word for it, actually, Jase. Thank you. I'm a kite surfer, and so gnarly to me is usually when the waves are too big and I still go out. But with our business, it was a real challenge. So we've spent the past 4 years building this business up. We've bootstrapped it. We've never taken investment, so we build on revenue. So every time we make profit, we use that to invest into building the team to be bigger and doing R&D into new projects. We've been building this thing called it's science pantomime. It's never really been done before. So pantomime is live theater that's comedy. We do that with a story and live explosive science. It's the only show in the world that's like it. And it's also the only show in the world that has a female lead and a female engineering lead as its role model. And so it really sort of is breaking things down in how we're breaking stereotypes. So it was going really well. We'd written 4 one-hour live theater shows. They sell out every year in New Zealand. And we finally got some global traction. So we were about to tour Australia for 4 weeks, then the Middle East for 6 weeks, and then we were going to do 2 months in the UK, including a full month at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival with our live theatre science show. It was going to go nuts, and we were excited. And then COVID happened, and everybody cancelled every event in the world. And so we went from a full year's schedule of work and income to no schedule and no work and no income and rent to pay and staff to pay and all of the other things that go along with running in a business. So yeah, that was a dark day, as we realized we'd lost everything that we'd worked towards in pretty much one virus in a day. So that's where we were at. And it was 3 days before lockdown. And I turned to my co-founder, Joe, who's also my husband. And we looked at each other and we were like, well, we've lost everything. So we've got a couple of choices to make. Yeah. And Joe and I we're not the type of people to be like, oh no, woe is me, it sucks. We were like, cool, right, it's time to fight. What are we going to do?
Let's get to it.
We turned to our staff and we had to make sure that they were on board, right? Because it was going to get crazy. And we said, hey, we've lost the business. Do you want to stay and do something completely new? And luckily they all went, yeah, like, cool, you're as crazy as us. So that was it. We decided to work out what our value proposition is, work out what people were going to need during lockdown, and realizing that schools were closed and parents are going to try and balance that whole working from home and homeschooling their kids basically at the same time, that they were going to look for a product that was going to help their kids to learn in a fun way using lockdown-friendly materials and also help the parents to learn too. So in 3 days, we built an online digital platform, a SaaS platform, basically subscription as a service. And then we built this studio we lived in for the whole of lockdown, which is above our office block. Wow. And yeah, we made content and we moved into the office and we camped here. We made this beautiful year-long education program that is called Nanogirl's Lab. And it's all about helping parents and kids learn about STEM in a fun and accessible way. And that's what we did. And so we went from nothing to building something totally new and something that would probably have taken us 2 years to build and release realistically in the pre-COVID world. And actually, when you're really desperate, we called on all of our friends and everybody to just help us code and build a studio in a day. And we did it in 3 days. So that's where we're at now.
Incredible. And has the big dream sort of changed, or the trajectory of where Nanogirls is heading? Or are you still dreaming of having those global events, traveling around the world, giving those experiences still? Hello? We seem to have lost connection with Michelle. I'm sure we'll get her back very shortly. Oh, we're back.
Can you still hear me?
We're
back. Hi, sorry. Okay.
No dramas. That's what happens when the curtains roll up.
Do you know what it is? It's my husband calling me. And I'm running on my 4G right now, and apparently my phone can't do two things at once.
Classic. Joe needs some business answers at the moment.
He probably does. And you should have seen in my diary that I'm busy. But anyway.
No drama. That's all good.
So, yeah, this is our new business. There's no way that live theatre is going to come back anytime soon. We can't rely on that. And actually, we found that we've been able to make much more impact doing what we do, or at least trace the impact. For every product that we sell, we donate one to a family who can't afford it. And we've been doing that either in the digital form, or we've been printing out worksheets for those who don't have digital at home. So we partnered with the Eat My Lunch, and in every Eat My Lunch box they got a science experiment that they could do using the packaging that came up with the food, so they didn't need to buy anything new. So yeah, this is probably us for the next year. We think it's really hard to run strategy when you're building the plane while you're flying it. So we need at some point to step back and figure out what we're doing.
Yeah, and the situation politically is changing as well. So we just don't know what's happening tomorrow, next month, next year. It's so hard. Just what, I guess, excites you about this situation? Obviously, you built something that would have taken you 2 years previously to make. That's pretty exciting. What else excites you just as a positive outcome from the COVID situation?
Look, I'm excited about how all the rules have gone. So here's what happened. We got a call from TVNZ saying, hey, we've set up this new home learning channel. Could you make a science TV show for it? And I'm like, we've been trying to make science TV with you guys for like a decade. And you'd be like, no, not going to happen. We've got all these protocols. You've got to go through this pitch and this RFP, and you've got to go to New Zealand and there for funding and blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly they were like, we need content. And we're like, well, do you have any money? They're like, we've got no money. I'm like, well, we've got no money. But if you let me get some money, can we do it our way? And they're like, yeah. And so we've been able to break all the rules. And we have this new TV show called Breaking It Down now, which is going out twice a week on the Home Learning Channel, which is the way I always wanted to make education happen. It's teaching a scientific concept and then having a really simple experiment that any kid can do at home. And we zoom in with the kid at home using lockdown-friendly materials. And then we buzz in with a real-life scientist who's literally dedicated their life to the topic that we're talking about. So kids can start to see what the relevance is of this wavelength that we're talking about in sound, for example. And we brought in a guy who listens to sounds in the bottom of the ocean. And so kids can actually start to see why we study this stuff at school. And so breaking the rules has been really good. Being able to make a TV show that we would never have been able to make outside of COVID. But when people are desperate, they let you do things in a different way. And so I'm excited about things changing.
Yeah, it's funny when there's a need for something, the rules go out the window and suddenly those asks become a lot more urgent to fulfill. Just shifting to education, the education space slightly. What do you think, how will the education system adapt at all levels? You've spent your time in primary education system, secondary, also tertiary. So what's your predictions in that space?
Yeah, so my predictions are, number one, I think now kids have been at home for so long, parents are getting a really good idea on what teachers actually do, and they don't just teach, right? There's a whole bunch of pastoral care, there's planning, there's stuff that hopefully parents will recognize the amount of work that teachers do. Secondly, remote learning has been really interesting, and I think, kids and teachers are starting to see the benefits of remote learning in some contexts. And I'm hoping that we're going to think about the future of learning and how maybe you don't need one teacher in every school to do this, but maybe you get, I don't want to say the best teacher, but an amazing teacher to teach all of the students, maybe through a TV show. And then when you come into the classroom, it's about guidance and questioning and learning about it in a different way, what we call the flipped classroom model. So I'm hoping that things are going to modernize a little bit versus what we used to do, which is chalk and talk, where somebody just sits at the chalkboard or the whiteboard now and chats to students directly. So I'm hoping the future is looking good. I'm hoping that access to online learning is really going to increase. We saw in the schools that we used to go to, there was a lot of resistance to technology. We've got to remember the average primary school teacher is 55 and a female. Wow. And that demographic tends to shift towards lack of confidence or lower confidence in technology. And I think those people who have always said to me, I'm never going to do this technology thing, have had to learn how to Zoom and had to learn how to use Seesaw and Google Classroom and some of the other ones. And I think now that they've forced themselves to do that, they might see the opportunities for how it's going to be useful for their kids.
Yeah, one of my friends, for better or for worse, termed it boomers to zoomers. They've had to adopt all this tech. They've had to jump on the wagon because they wouldn't survive otherwise. All these industries had to change, and just like that, in the blink of an eye. What do you think this will mean for New Zealand collectively in 6 months down the track, and also longer term? Because society is going to change.
Look, I think our economy is going to take a really big hit. I think that for many reasons, and it's going to be pretty sad before it gets better. Obviously our number one export is tourism, and we've lost that industry, and there's going to be a lot of businesses that will have no income and will have to close, and that's going to be tragic. So I worry that we need to get the right systems around those people to help them to pivot their business or adapt their business or maybe restart a new business in a way that also cares for their mental health, and also make sure that that they have the technology expertise that they need. There are so many small businesses that don't have a website, that don't know how to even build that, SEO or any of those other things that those of us who are in the digital space know how to do. So I think we need to really pull together to help those businesses and think about what the future market looks like for us. Is tourism going to be our number one export? And if not, what can we do really well from New Zealand that we can sell globally? So setting up tech companies, like if we look at Xero, for example, that sells globally, but it's made in New Zealand. So are there other products like that are digitally based that we can export without having to ship them? I think we're going to have to take a really good look at ourselves, and also think about, agriculture is one of our big exports too. And so what does that look like for a very focused topic here? Is there technology we can sell around what we do around agriculture and agri-tech that we can be selling to other countries and making money from, as well as just our actual physical meat and dairy products? So I think New Zealand's going to need to really look at itself and really pull together to help the skill sets that we need to actually bring people together, because you might have an expertise in something, but if you don't know how to sell it online and if you don't know how to do the digital thing, it's not going to work. So this is going to be where companies who never work together hopefully are going to start collaborating, because we are all in this together. And I think it's going to really hurt to start with.
Yeah. What's that look like in 2 years' time, do you think?
I don't think the world knows. And the reason why the world doesn't know is because we are all relying on something called a vaccine to come. Now, here's my fear. We've been trying to find a vaccine for SARS, which we discovered SARS 10 years ago. We've been trying to find a vaccine for that for the last 10 years. SARS is also a coronavirus. And then after SARS came MERS, which was passed through camels. MERS is a coronavirus. And we've been studying those coronaviruses for so long and haven't managed to find a vaccine. I worry that we're putting too much hope into finding a vaccine for this new COVID, and it may not come. And so what we've talked about is, well, we're going to open up our borders as soon as there's a vaccine around, because then everybody can travel freely. I think we need to have a real grown-up conversation around, well, what happens if the vaccine doesn't come? And what are we going to do then? Because we can't sit and wait all the time. So 2 years from now is a really challenging time, because if we progress with a vaccine in the way that we wish to, 2 years from now, we should be able to be producing enough vaccine that everybody in the world can have one. But if it doesn't go to plan, 2 years from now, we're still here trying to protect our people by closing our borders. So I think it's too hard to predict.
Yeah, the science definitely needs to be in place. What do you think is the technology we're not using to the best of our capability that can give New Zealand an advantage through this whole situation, and so we collectively come out this unscathed?
Do you know, I don't think it's our technology. I think it's our island nature. I've been involved in a lot of taking businesses and delegates from businesses overseas to China, to LA. And one of the things that I realized, because I lived in the States for 10 years, so I sort of understand that marketing and how they sell things in the US, and it's very different to how we sell it in New Zealand. And you can't make a New Zealand product and be like, oh, well, everybody in America will buy it too because they speak English. It doesn't work like that. So I think it's not the technology that we lack. I think it's the understanding of how to scale globally and how to sell your product into other markets, and not just assume that they'll know who you are because you're a cool Kiwi business, but actually how to use the resources well and to pitch at the right market. And you just can't take global. You don't go, oh, everybody will buy it. You have to be really, really niche. And so if you want to go to America, which state? Because you need to concentrate state by state. You can't just go global and the whole nation of America. And I think we lack some of that understanding as to how big the world can be, and how you need, so much around resourcing and internal knowledge and salespeople on the ground in local territories to be able to go global. And so I don't think it's a technology problem. I think we're pretty good on the tech. I think it's a lack of understanding of how big the world can be and how to be niche in marketing our products.
And also a communication problem, so that we can get ourselves out there. Do you think we're getting better at it compared to, say, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or it's almost a generational thing that'll take time to fix?
I don't think it's a generational thing. I think you have to, that's the problem with COVID. You used to have to get your boots on the ground and move to a new location and just immerse yourself in that ecosystem and meet the right people and meet the right connections to get things started. We're not going to be able to do that now. And I worry that not being able to do that really limits our ability to figure out where we need to be and where the markets are. So this is a real time for collaboration and cross-country collaboration, where you're going to have to meet somebody maybe on Zoom and chat to them and see if they're going to be the right employee for you. and hope that you trust their judgment as to how to sell in their state or in their, whether that's Australia or the US or the country of the UK. So yeah, I think it's I think the lack of us being able to go and live in a place for a little bit and see if our business is going to fit there is going to be a real challenge. And I think it's a different problem that we had 5 years ago, when you could just go and spend a year in the US or move to the UK on a visa and just figure out what the market looks like. Sure.
I've got a question about universities, because I know it's a world you messed with a while back. How do you think the business model of universities will change? Because they relied on those international students to pay a lot of fees, and that's been working somewhat for the past, 40 years, 30 years. What do you think the universities will do to shift their thinking?
Look, the university that's going to survive the fastest is going to be the one that gives a unique remote experience to an offshore student or an international student. And this is where it gets really interesting, because what used to happen is we have 7 institutions in New Zealand, and they used to compete against each other for international money. So a student perhaps from China would come here and pick one of our 7 universities, and maybe we'd be competing with our universities and those in Australia, but typically there wasn't too much competition. Now with remote access, we're going to be competing against the Harvards and the Yales, and pretty much every university in the world is going to be one that they might apply to, because they might have to do this remotely and study from home in order to, be able to deal with the travel restrictions. And I think it's going to be really challenging if New Zealand universities don't offer a high value proposition to international students, that they feel like it's worth paying 4 times more than a domestic fee to do something that they're already going to do at home. And so I think New Zealand really has to think about its international game, and what are we offering that's different, and how are we giving literally a VIP experience to international students remotely so that they want to send their fees here. Otherwise, the current financial model is just not going to work. And we're seeing that, right? We've seen the revenues being down. The universities run on such small margins anyway that this big hit is going to be a big hit. The head of the universities are talking about, academics going down to 4 days a week or making redundancies, and the money is not going to come in this year. So the model will have to change. Universities are slow, big beasts, and I don't think it's going to change fast enough, sadly. And I think we're going to see some casualties around that.
Do you think New Zealand can play at that level with the Ivy Leagues, and we can compete with them?
Yeah, I really do. We've got great talent here. We've got great academics. We've got amazing research. The challenge we've got in New Zealand is we have a lot of institutions for quite a small population. And right now they're all competing with each other. And I'm like, we've got amazing people. Imagine if we weren't always competing against our own, but instead competing against the world. And so I think that's one of our challenges, is I think it's quite a crowded market space. And I think that, like I said, there may be casualties, and that maybe we might have to reduce the way that we fund the number of institutions that we have. And if so, some of them might not survive in the way that they've been surviving previously.
Yeah. Interesting. We'll see what happens in the next 6 months or next few years around that space. Do you have any closing thoughts around anything to do with New Zealand or what's happening with COVID, just for the viewers out there who might be tuning in before we close off?
Yeah, look, we are probably in one of the luckiest places on the planet. So as a New Zealander, I'm super proud. And I've been doing a lot of interviews with international media, and they keep looking at New Zealand as the showcase of how to do it well. We locked down really hard and it really hurt businesses, but it looks like we're going to come out early and do well with that. And so I think everybody should be really proud of pulling together and really like the fact that we can deal with cases on and talk about them in their single digits is incredible. So yeah, I think we're really lucky. I think we need to now think about, how do we pick up the economy? How do we pivot our business? How do we be bold and think about what the next 2 years might look like? How do we plan our businesses for what if there isn't a vaccine, and are we going to be resilient to that? And how are we going to help our industry, such as our tourism industry, to think about what's next? Because there's going to be your neighbors and your friends who are going to be hurting right now. And how do we pull together? We're a small country and we all know each other. So what do we need to do to help our neighbors to make sure that we can all get through this together?
Excellent message. Thank you so much. If people want to find you, what's the best place to find you on?
Yeah, check us out at nanogirlslab.com. This is Nanogirl. This is the lab. And so it's pretty simple. If you've got kids and you want them to learn at home, please subscribe. It's a super fun program, and I've been having a blast making it. And we've got a great team behind us. So yeah, please support New Zealand business at nanogirllabs.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for jumping on. Michelle, you're an epic New Zealander. You're really cool. You're an inspiration to me and many people around the country. So thank you for jumping on, and good luck with everything in your world and the Nanogirl Labs. I'm sure everyone loves what you do there, and the knowledge that you bring to many around the country. So thank you.
Okay, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see each other again soon in real life.
Absolutely. See you later.
See ya.
Michelle Dickinson. She is one epic smart lady. She's delved into many worlds from the education space. She's a best-selling author, she's a speaker, she's a change maker, innovator, engineer, you name it, she's done it. It's pretty cool, and I was pretty excited to have her on the show. So I'll be watching her journey in the months ahead, but also the years to come. So that's all from me. We've got some more epic speakers coming up on the show later this week, so tune in then. But until then, I'll see you later. Peace.